The ride was over. Or so Maya thought, but in the quiet, sprawling city, where the only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog, endings were never so simple. She stepped out of the silver sedan into the biting January night, her breath hanging in the air like a ghost. The world felt still, the streetlights casting long, trembling shadows across the frozen pavement. She offered a polite thank you, her voice barely more than a whisper in the cold. The driver, Aaron, just watched her. His eyes, dark and unreadable, followed her every movement, his silhouette unmoving behind the fogged glass. As Maya walked to her apartment, the wind rustled the bare branches overhead, and a prickling unease crawled up her spine. The city felt emptier than usual, as if it were holding its breath. She fumbled for her keys, her hands trembling, the metallic jingle echoing in the silence. She couldn't help but glance back, heart pounding. The sedan was still there, engine idling, headlights fixed on her building, exhaust curled from the tailpipe, a silent signal that he hadn't left. Why was he waiting? The app had processed her payment. There was no reason for him to stay. The digital world had declared the transaction finished, but reality felt unfinished, suspended. Maybe he was setting his GPS, she told herself. Maybe just resting, worn out from a long night of ferrying strangers through the city's labyrinth. But he wasn't looking at his phone. He was watching her. His gaze was unwavering, almost hungry, as if he was memorizing every detail. A cold knot formed in her stomach. She hurried inside, slamming the door and locking it with shaking hands, desperate for the thin barrier to keep her safe. From the lobby window she watched. The car didn't move. Its headlights glared back at her, unblinking. 5 minutes. 10. Each second stretched, the ticking of the clock growing louder in her ears. The sedan remained, a silent threat in the night. Its presence was like a weight pressing against the windows, suffocating and inescapable. Every sound in the building amplified her fear. The creak of pipes, the distant echo of footsteps, each one made her jump. This wasn't normal. She'd taken hundreds of ride-shares, but never had a driver lingered like this. The app was supposed to be safe, a modern convenience, never a source of dread. It felt possessive, as if the ride hadn't truly ended for him. He knew her name, her face, the details she trusted to the app. He knew where she lived. The knowledge felt like a violation, a secret she'd never meant to share. The trust she'd placed in the app now felt like a mistake. The glow of her phone screen offered no comfort, only a reminder of her vulnerability. The digital connection that brought him to her now felt like a tether, binding her to a stranger she could not escape. Finally, after 15 agonizing minutes, the car's engine revved. The sedan pulled away, headlights sweeping across her building one last time, leaving only darkness in its wake. Maya exhaled, trembling. The immediate threat was gone, but a deeper fear remained, coiling in her chest. He had shown her that for him, the end of the ride was just the beginning. The memory of his gaze lingered, as real as any shadow. The shadow of his presence lingered, a cold premonition of danger that seeped into every corner of her apartment. She realized the safety she'd trusted was fragile, and the rideshare app's promise was not as secure as she'd believed. She double-checked every lock, every setting, desperate for reassurance. That night Maya peered through the blinds, haunted by the memory of those headlights. Every passing car made her flinch. The ride was over, but the fear was just beginning. The city outside was silent, but inside, her mind raced with possibilities. She wondered if she'd ever feel safe getting into a stranger's car again. The trust she'd once had was shattered, replaced by suspicion and dread. The digital world had brought him to her door, and left her with a shadow she couldn't shake. The promise of convenience had become a source of fear. The night was silent, but Maya's heart was loud with dread. In the darkness, the lingering shadow of that rideshare would haunt her long after the car was gone. When rideshare apps first appeared, they promised more than just a ride. They offered a sense of security and control in a world that often felt unpredictable, especially after dark. With a simple tap, a car would materialize at your location. No more waiting on a deserted street corner. No more waving down strangers. The app displayed the driver's name, their photo, and a rating, details that made the experience feel personal, almost familiar, even though you'd never met. Every journey was mapped and tracked by GPS, creating a digital breadcrumb trail that seemed to promise accountability. For young professionals, students, and night shift workers, this was a revolution. It meant no more walking home alone, No more uncertainty about who would pick you up. The app became a silent guardian. Friends could follow your route in real time, and both rider and driver were held to a new standard of transparency. If something felt off, there was a record, a digital footprint, a company to contact, a complaint to file. It felt like someone always had your back. The companies marketed this system as a safety net, assuring us that every driver was carefully vetted, every ride monitored. We trusted the technology. Star ratings, GPS tracking, and digital receipts became our armor against the unknown. Night after night, millions of people, students after parties, workers after late shifts, travelers in unfamiliar cities, stepped into strangers' cars, believing in the app's invisible shield. But beneath the comfort, a quiet anxiety lingered. What if that trust was misplaced? What if the system's promises were only skin deep? What if someone learned to manipulate the very tools designed to keep us safe? What if a predator could hide behind a profile picture and a 5-star rating? The seamless data-driven convenience that made ride-sharing so appealing could also become its greatest weakness, a vulnerability hiding in plain sight. The illusion of safety was powerful. It was what made millions trust the system night after night. But illusions can be fragile. When they break, the consequences can be devastating. When trust is betrayed, the sense of safety vanishes, replaced by fear and regret. The real question is, how well do we truly know the person behind the wheel? And what happens when the promise of a safe ride home is broken? Aaron Cole was the kind of man you'd never remember. Late 30s, quiet, with a face that seemed to blur into the background. He moved through the world like a shadow, unnoticed, unremarkable. His background check was spotless, his digital footprint barely a whisper. No red flags, no history. Just a string of 5-star reviews and a sparse online presence. He was the perfect candidate, the kind of driver the system was built to trust. Algorithms flagged him as safe, reliable, invisible. But Aaron was more than just a driver. Beneath the surface, he was a predator, patient, calculating, always watching. The rideshare app became his gateway, granting him access to the city's most vulnerable. Passengers alone, tired and trusting, often in the dead of night. He learned to exploit the system, driving the graveyard shift when the city was at its most exposed, when riders were desperate to get home. Aaron studied his passengers, memorizing their faces, their routines, their destinations. Every ride was a lesson, every detail a potential opportunity. The app was his hunting ground, the car his lair. In the digital night, he was both everywhere and nowhere. Passengers, lulled by the promise of safety, never suspected the threat sitting just inches away. They trusted the system, and the system trusted Aaron. For Aaron, the rideshare job was the perfect disguise, a mask that let him stalk his prey in plain sight, hidden by the very technology meant to protect. Aaron's methods were chillingly methodical, each step calculated with the precision of someone who had studied his prey for years. He didn't just drive, he hunted. He worked the graveyard shift, targeting solo passengers, almost always women. He knew the city's rhythms, the bars that closed late, the neighborhoods where people stumbled home alone, groups were ignored or canceled. If a ride request showed more than one passenger, he'd let it pass, sometimes even circling the block to avoid being seen. A single rider was easier to control, less likely to fight back, less likely to be missed right away. He'd memorize their faces, their nervous glances, the way they clutched their phones. He used the app's information to build quick profiles, selecting victims based on isolation and vulnerability. He'd note if someone was new to the city, or if their profile hinted at late-night routines. After each ride, he lingered nearby, watching his passengers enter their homes, burning their locations into memory. Sometimes, he'd double back hours later, just to see if their lights were still on. He kept a secret log of names, addresses, and times. He'd jot down details, what they wore if they seemed intoxicated, if they mentioned living alone. The app gave him data, his obsession did the rest. He'd analyze ride histories, looking for patterns, who rode late, who changed addresses, who always rode alone. He stalked his targets online, piecing together their lives from social media. He'd find their Instagram stories, their check-ins, their friends, anything to make them less of a stranger, more of a mark. Sometimes he'd send anonymous messages, testing boundaries, seeing who responded and who ignored him. He'd even create fake profiles to befriend his targets online, gathering more personal details. He became an unseen presence, maintaining control long after the app said the journey was complete. He thrived on the illusion of safety, knowing his victims never suspected the danger lurking behind a friendly smile. The system's convenience became his weapon. He exploited every loophole, every blind spot, every moment when trust replaced caution. He was always watching, always waiting. His patience was predatory. He could wait days, weeks, even months for the perfect moment. And no one suspected a thing. To the world, he was just another driver, but to his victims, he was the nightmare they never saw coming. The first complaints about Aaron barely registered. A strange question here, a too long stare in the rearview mirror, a driver who lingered just a moment too long after the ride was over. Passengers would glance at their phones, debating whether to say something, their instincts prickling with discomfort. Was it paranoia? Or was something truly off? These subtle warnings, nervous glances, hurried exits, uneasy silences, were scattered, lost in a sea of endless rides and data points. To the company, each report was just a blip, an isolated incident, a minor complaint, nothing to suggest a pattern lurking beneath the surface. Victims second-guessed themselves, replaying the ride in their minds. Was it worth reporting? Or would they just be dismissed as overreacting? The unease lingered, unspoken, as they tried to convince themselves it was nothing. The system, built for efficiency, failed to connect the dots, each warning sign dissolving into the background noise of the city. Aaron slipped through the cracks, a shadow behind the wheel, his presence barely noticed, his confidence growing with every ignored warning. The whispers of unease echoed in the dark, unheard and unanswered, as the city kept moving, and Aaron kept driving. The escalation was inevitable, but no one could have predicted how quickly a routine ride would spiral into a nightmare. One rainy night, Chloe requested a ride home after a late shift. Aaron was assigned. She hesitated for a moment, unsettled by the driver's profile, but exhaustion won out. The ride was silent, thick with tension. Chloe watched the city lights blur past until Aaron missed her turn, insisting it was a shortcut. Her unease deepened. Instead of heading toward her apartment, Aaron steered the car into a deserted industrial park. The familiar city faded behind them, replaced by looming warehouses and empty lots. Panic set in. Chloe's voice shook as she demanded to be let out. Aaron stared straight ahead, ignoring her pleas, his grip tightening on the wheel. The child's safety locks were engaged. Chloe's heart pounded. She was trapped, her only exit sealed. Her GPS showed her moving farther and farther from home, the route twisting into unfamiliar territory. The digital safety net she relied on was failing. Her rideshare app froze, and her emergency calls wouldn't go through. Desperate, Chloe screamed, banged on the window, and finally lunged for the steering wheel, her fear boiling over into raw survival instinct. The car swerved violently, crashing into a fence. The impact jolted them both, glass and metal scattering across the night. In the chaos, Aaron finally unlocked the doors. Chloe scrambled out, adrenaline surging, lungs burning as she gasped for air. She ran blindly through the darkness, not daring to look back until she found the glow of streetlights and help. Shaken and breathless, Chloe told police everything, the driver's name, the car, every terrifying detail. This was no longer just a creepy ride, it was attempted kidnapping, and the evidence was undeniable. Chloe's ordeal finally triggered a full-scale criminal investigation, detectives piecing together the chilling puzzle. The ride that wouldn't end had finally put Aaron Cole on law enforcement's radar, and this time, there would be no escape. Chloe's report gave police what they needed, a serious crime and a reason to dig deeper. Detectives immediately began piecing together the puzzle, mapping out Aaron's movements and connections. Investigators subpoenaed Aaron's ride history and complaint logs, then secured his devices for forensic analysis. Every digital footprint became a potential clue. Patterns emerged, high cancellation rates for men, a focus on solo women, and repeated lingering near drop-off locations. Investigators cross-referenced trip data with reported incidents, revealing a disturbing consistency. GPS data showed him returning to victims' neighborhoods, circling their blocks, and sometimes parking for long stretches. Surveillance footage confirmed his car's presence at odd hours. His devices revealed search histories for victims' addresses, bookmarked social media profiles, and a secret log of names and addresses. Investigators also uncovered deleted messages and attempts to mask his online activity. The digital breadcrumbs exposed his stalking, both physical and online. Encrypted chats, hidden folders, and surveillance footage painted a chilling portrait of obsession. The evidence was overwhelming. Aaron's predatory use of technology was finally laid bare, leaving no doubt about the extent of his digital stalking. Detectives began reaching out to Aaron's former passengers, piecing together a timeline of warnings that had gone unheeded. One by one, the stories emerged, accounts of unease, of boundaries crossed, of trust shattered in the backseat of a car meant to be safe. Many had reported their concerns, describing uncomfortable encounters and suspicious behavior. They relied on the app's safety features, believing their voices would be heard, but their reports seemed to vanish into a void. The polished interface and promises of security made them second-guess their instincts. How could something so official, so widely trusted, fail them so completely? When they reached out for help, the company's responses were cold and impersonal, automated emails, small refunds, and reassurances that their feedback was important. But nothing changed. The very system designed to protect riders had, in reality, shielded the predator. Layers of bureaucracy and algorithmic indifference allowed Aaron to keep driving, night after night. It was only after Chloe's ordeal, after the headlines, the outrage, the undeniable evidence, that the company finally took action. But for many, it was far too late. For those who had tried to sound the alarm, the trauma was twofold. Not just the violation itself, but the crushing realization that their pleas for help had been ignored, dismissed, and forgotten. The consequences rippled outward, trust broken, lives changed, and a community left to wonder how many warnings it would take before someone finally listened. Aaron Cole's arrest was quiet, almost anticlimactic, yet the evidence was overwhelming, a digital trail that left no room for doubt. Ride logs, GPS data, and a chilling pattern of digital stalking painted a picture more disturbing than anyone had imagined. In the aftermath, ride-share companies scrambled to contain the fallout, issuing statements, promising new safety features, and vowing to overhaul complaint protocols. But for many riders, these promises felt like little more than damage control. The sense of betrayal lingered, and trust was not so easily restored. Aaron's case became a warning, a stark reminder that the systems we rely on can be manipulated, and that danger can hide behind a friendly interface. Digital trust, once broken, is hard to repair. The very convenience we crave can be the doorway for exploitation. Technology, for all its promise, cannot eliminate human malice. It can only mask it. Sometimes, until it's too late. The tools designed to protect us can just as easily be turned against us. For every new safeguard, a new vulnerability emerges. We're left to wonder, is digital safety just an illusion we cling to, a comforting story we tell ourselves as we hand over our data and our trust? When we trust an app with our lives, are we making an informed choice, or simply hoping that the odds are in our favor? In the end, are we truly safe, or just closing our eyes and wishing for the best? The reckoning has come, but the answers remain elusive.